Piper, what's your new do?
Well,
Andy saying hi.
Thank you. Hey, Andy. Yes, my new do is a couple of weeks old now. Growing into it, but thank you.
Everybody know that we'll start in a little while. Give people time off.
Okay, so hi to all folks who've jumped on already. We're going to, it's 12:57 now, just going to do a couple of minutes just to let everyone jump on and get all situated. And then we'll go ahead and we'll get started. See Sandra there. You must know a hairstylist. Self cut. Yeah, it was a self haircut. I had a moment, and ta-da! Here we go. So.
Do you want to talk to people or
Huh? Yeah. So weird. So I guess we've got, by the looks of things, we've got a lot of, we've got a few states who are back at work, which is pretty cool. Cool to start talking to some hairdressers who are doing hair, which is really encouraging. Gives us a little bit of hope for those of us who are not back in the salon yet. But this is pretty sweet. I know we're probably looking at another 2 weeks here. I'm based just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. So it looks like we've got another couple of weeks before we get started, which is great. I'm itching to get back into the salon in whatever capacity that looks like. So I'd be interested to, if you're back in the salon, I'd be interested to hear what steps that you've started to implement in your salon to to get compliant and to and sharing some of your experiences would be kind of cool too. As far as how your clients are receiving the measures that you're putting in, and and how what it's like to work like that too. I mean, it'd be nice to sort of have a little bit of insight as to what we're sort of walking into there. So, I mean, I know I'm excited to get back and do hair. I think that's going to be really cool. But it'll be interesting just to hear from people who are back at the salon and some of the successes that you've had. And then some of the opportunities that we could share with with each other to sort of see what it is that how we can make our days run smoother, and how we can really just sort of make sure that we're doing exactly what it is that we need to do to make sure that we're all being on point, safe, and but most of all being able to get our job done. I think that's for me personally, that's the biggest thing is with all the measures and so forth that are going to be implemented around the country. It's interesting to hear what how it impacts you on a daily, client basis, and some of your ideas and some of the techniques and stuff that you've done to maybe sort of work around it or work with it or work through it. So we'd love to love for you to go ahead and post some things that you're doing, and then some maybe some challenges that you might have faced, and then a solution would be really cool. So I think the more that we can all be compliant and be on board, I think that we're able to move forward as an industry, as one, and really set the standard and set the bar. So go ahead and share that with us, because I think it would be really cool to get some insight as to what people are doing in different areas. I think that'd be really sweet, and it'd be really helpful. So we can use each other as a resource to see exactly what it is that everyone's doing around the country. So I know personally, I'd like to hear from people to hear what they're doing. And I think as an industry, it'd be great for us to share that knowledge so it really does become that bar that we're setting, and we're able to really move forward and get back to work. I know, I mean, if you guys are like me, I mean, I'm itching to get back there, so it'd be really cool.
Ready to go?
Ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you might be located on this great planet of ours. My name is Gareth Palmer. I am the Senior Creative Design Ambassador for Q North America, and have been given the opportunity to spend the next little bit of time with you to just to share some ideas and some platforms that we have been using at the Academy for the past couple of years. So we'd like to go ahead and share some of that with you. Today's topic is going to be express design, and as we move back into the salon, where we are facing different challenges as far as how we can see the maximum amount of clients in the time that's been allotted to us. So really being effective and being efficient with our time, I think, is going to be really important. That way we can see as many of our clients as we possibly can, and really and do a really good job, and be able to repeat our work and be able to work more methodically and more efficiently that way. So what we're going to go through today, and share today, is something that I've been shown a few years ago. And when I really grasped this process and really sort of got on board with this platform, it made it so much more logical and so much easier for me to effectively cut hair. But then it also went ahead and made it so much more effective for me to be able to recreate or to troubleshoot, which I think is that's important too. The big takeaway for me when I really got on board with this was that if I got in the weeds at work, and of course we all get in the weeds at work at some point, when I get in the weeds at work, if I want to go faster, sometimes I tend to try to take shortcuts, and that can either A, get me lost, or B, I start taking sections that are a little bit too big, and then my end result might be a little bit different than what my expected outcome is. So we just want to make sure, so when we're going through this, and when I really embraced this, I found that I actually worked a little slower, but I was a lot more methodical in the way that I was able to approach my haircuts. And I use this with my color applications as well. So then I started to really have my color applications and my design working together, because I had true understanding as to where the hair lives, where the hair originated from, and what I'm asking that hair to go ahead and do. So so what we'll do, as far as the actual program today is, we're going to go through, and I'll show you that section. I'll show you that platform as to how it is, and then how that can actually be implemented into body position as well, because that's really big. I know sometimes we will, we may do the hairdresser lean, and if you're not familiar with the hairdresser lean, if you're a right-hander, you tend to work all the way around on the left-hand side of someone, and then when you go to that right-hand side, sometimes you end up stopping and you start to lean over, which can start to create some over-direction or unwanted over-direction, and some excess length that we don't necessarily want. So we can go ahead and we'll go through that. So and it's funny the way that it all actually works together. The nice part about this was that I was able to, when I embraced this, that I was able to identify areas of the head that, the haircut that my clients might have been having challenges with, and I was able to really isolate that area and be able to go through it and to fix that. So it was good for me as far just as a whole understanding as to what it is that I was doing and what I was asking the hair to do. Anytime I had any challenges come back with my clients saying, hey, you know what, this is not quite working for me, I was able to isolate that area, fix that, and then be able to go through and to really make sure that I was taking care of that spot as well. So what we'll do is, I think we'll just go through and we'll start with this process. Okay, so when we get into design or into color and so forth, what we're looking at is areas of the head. So when we're talking about areas of the head, we want to make sure that we're able to replicate and duplicate those areas. So, sorry. So by being able to go ahead and replicate those areas, what we're using is each individual's client's head shape to be able to give them that perfect design. So the way that I was able to do this, and this is going to change. Excuse me. This is going to change from client to client, but not only is it going to change from client to client, on the same client, you may not have exactly the same distribution or the head shape on that one client. So we're working on a sphere that's imperfect. So we want to make sure that when we're talking about this, that we're actually being able to truly identify where those areas of the head are. So what I've done is I shaved this poor girl down and went ahead and drew on her. And I've drawn each of the areas of the head in different colors, and I'll show you the way that we're able to go ahead and identify these here. But just for visual purposes, I went through and just started to color those in. So just using your comb, and when I started doing this, it made absolute perfect sense when I was starting to create sectioning. Just using your comb to be able to work out exactly, so you can see where the black colored area on the back through here is, that's going to isolate your nape and your occipital area. When you go up to the green section, where that comb leaves the head once again, that's going to tell you where that back area is. Same on the crown area, and you've got your top, and then you've also got your two sides where that's going to, so where that comb leaves the head, that's a change of direction. These are all change of directions, and these are just the areas of the head. So when you start to do techniques and start using cutting techniques, you can then begin to isolate and put those into different areas. So therefore, they're able to create that technique that lives in that area, and it's not going over and changing the direction. Because at one point here, you might have hair that's starting to fall, you might have hair that's starting to lay, and then you may have hair here that we want to sort of maybe create some. Maybe you want to create some volume or something in it. So when we start to isolate our techniques, our cutting techniques, rather than picking up the entire section, we want to isolate those down into different areas. The really cool part about this is that if I have a challenge, or if I've got someone who might have slightly skinnier hair and their density is not as good, you can really change that up and say, okay, in the back sections I can stay on base with my haircut. And through the sides, I can then start to over-direct that, but I'm doing that on purpose. So I'm able to isolate that hair and be able to move that hair back when we start to do that. So now all of my techniques are on purpose, as opposed to just doing it because that kind of feels right. So we've got our areas of the head. That's just the areas of the head there. What you've also got are vertical sections in the head, and in vertical sections, they're going to look like this. Every head's got 8 sections on the head here. Now, like I said, different sides might be a little bit different depending upon how you do that. So when you're using your areas of the head, you're using the comb and you're using that vertically. To isolate these sections, we're going to do that horizontally. Once again, you're just going to lay that comb on the side of the head, and where that comb leaves the head, that is a change of direction. So what you want to do, so if you take a bob, for instance, and you're cutting this shape in here, if you are starting to move hair from the back section here, and you're cutting it with that side, what you're doing is you're actually over-directing that hair and moving that out of the way. By moving it over here, you're going to create not a straight line, but it's actually going to start to get a little bit longer when it comes towards the back. So what we want to do is where that hair actually lives, you want to cut the hair where it lives. So I know when I first started doing hair, to cut a bob, we would isolate that back section across there, probably about the occipital, and then subsection that out there through it with a horizontal line. But what I was also doing is I've got my 4 vertical sections in through the back here, but what I was doing is I was cutting this panel, this section and this section as one, and then this section and this section as one as well. What I was actually creating was not a straight line, but I was creating an arc line like this. So by being able to go ahead and to isolate those, so instead of doing that in one section here and then one section here, I was cutting it in 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I was moving my head I'm moving my body all the way around the head when I start to do that haircut. By moving that body and centering your section to each of these vertical sections through here, you're not going to have any sway or movement creating over direction, which will give you a little bit more length from one side to the other. So you just want to make sure that you're really aware of where your body positions are. Now the reason I bring this up is because when I first got really on board with this style of cutting, is I was like, yeah, that absolutely makes sense. But how do I go ahead and start to marry those two dolls together? So I'm just going to quickly go ahead and show you how you go ahead and you marry those two dolls together, and then all of a sudden all that sectioning becomes really easy for you. So I'll just grab my marker. So across the back we'd have our back section. Around the side, that's going to come around and that's going to give you that section as well. Now the way you marry those sections is you're going to have the 8 vertical sections, and the next thing you know, all of the sectioning that you're cutting then becomes a little bit easier for you to identify. So in having our vertical sections now, so now we can actually see is there's one section I'm going to cut, there's one section I'm going to cut, there's one section I'm going to cut, there's one section I'm going to cut here. I can then start to layer that. So if I want to start at the bottom and cut my perimeter first, I can go ahead and I can cut 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I can bring this top section down, which is another change of direction, which will be at the round of the head. Then I can go 1, 2, 3, 4 and cut that as well. Then I'm cutting that back section 1, 2, 3, 4 through the pie sections through the top, and that's going to go ahead and that's going to create a little bit of an easier and a quicker way for us to go ahead and cut. The cool part about it is when you start to add elevation into this, you're able to really create a lot more, have a lot more control over the way that you're sectioning your hair out, and you're not having to go back and cut and recut and recut. When it comes to body positioning, and this was my really big aha with this. So when it came to body position with this, what I've done is I've drawn a head here, and I've got there's my nose. It's just a little nose at the front here. So if we break that up just into 8 sections, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So then we've got our 8 vertical sections throughout the head. What this is going to create for us here is where you're going to stand with your when you're cutting on each of these sections. So when I was taught to cut a bob, and I was originally taught to try and cut that straight line across the bottom, I was sitting center back, which meant I was moving all of this hair behind the ear back towards that center. What we actually want to do is we want to stand here, 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 and here in each center of those sections. What that's going to do, that's going to give you even distribution of that hair throughout the entire that back section, and not create any more over direction, and giving you a little bit more length in behind the ears there. Your sides, here, and then you get into your fringe, into those front sections through there. Now you can go one step further with this if you've got someone who has got like more hair than like an English sheepdog. I mean, you're like cutting a Yeti. You can subdivide these sections once again. And when you subdivide those sections again, then you change where you're standing. So you stand here, here, here. So what you're basically doing, because you're dealing with that much more hair and it's so much with so much more density there, it can be a little bit hard to control, or it could be a little bit difficult to manipulate. By subdividing that, I'm actually going to give myself a little bit more control over all of those sections through there, because now I've got my smaller sections. The cool part about this is I can put this on the floor. And when I put that on the floor, especially if we're training, if we've got apprentices or we've got people who are getting new into the industry and we want to really start instilling some good habits with them, I can put that on the floor and lay it on and put my tripod on top of it, and it basically gives me a body position chart as to where I can stand. That keeps us honest as far as being aware of what our body's doing, because if we're leaning with our body, then we're leaning to a section. We're always going to bring that section back to center. And when we bring it back to center, that's when we start to create a little bit more of that over direction. So we just want to be really, really aware of the way that is working. During a consult, sorry.
What about the top section? Like, is the top feeding into the side sections, or
this here?
Uh-huh.
So on this section here, so everything works up to the high point of the head. So when we say everything works to the high point of the head, at that high point of the head where the comb is going to balance on the top of the head, what that's going to do, that's going to create the apex or the peak through there. At that point, that's going to originate from where that pie section is going to be. So the widest part of the head is going to be, or the most dynamic part of the head is going to be through this green section through here, because that's the broadest part of the head through here. When we start getting into the top sections in through here, because we're originating off of a pie-shaped section, the sections are going to be quite small in the center, and they're going to start to get broader as you get towards the parietal ridge. Okay, so everything does work off of that top section through there. Now, when you go ahead and you start to deal with partings, like people are parting their hair off to the side, obviously you want to go ahead and you want to make sure that you're cutting to that part as well. Does that answer that question for you? Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my dole and I'm going to show you how quick that this can be for sectioning it out, or when you are talking with your client, because this is when it came down for me, was a really, really big thing, was I was able to identify and isolate a problem area that my client might be having. So she comes in and she says, hey, it felt a little bit bulky just behind the ear. What I can do is I can go through and I can section out that area and say, is that piece that you feel is bulky? She's like, yeah, absolutely. I can then take that, before we go to the shampoo bowl, I can adjust that. And she goes, yeah, that feels so much better, because when we go back to the shampoo bowl, the water goes ahead and that pretty much takes everything away. That goes ahead and it changes the dynamic of the actual head. So being able to identify, isolate, and then correct that spot there for her,